Good morning. My name is Judy Ledbetter. Today is March 11th, 1998. We're in the home of Doris Christian, who is today 75 years old and has lived her whole life in Charles City. We're going to ask her some questions about her life and her family and her recollections of Charles City. Mrs. Christian, good morning.
Good morning.
First of all, to kind of begin at the beginning, when were you born and at what location in Charles City, if you know?
Well, I was born right here in Ruthville at the home place, right on Ruthville Road, and to Sylvanus and Beatrice Brown. And I was
What was the day of your birth?
February the 24th,
Okay,
1923.
1923. And if you know, was your birth assisted by a doctor or a midwife?
Midwife.
Do you know the name of the
Mrs.
midwife?
Woodley.
Mrs. Woodley.
Woodley,
Was she a resident of Ruthville? Or
No,
did
she was in Charles City. She was on 155
on Courthouse Road. And she came to attend your birth.
My daddy went to get her.
Okay. Now, your mother and father were Sylvanus?
Yeah, and Junior, Sylvanus Jr., and Beatrice Brown.
Okay. And I'm going to sort of go through your parents, grandparents, great-grandparents.
Yes.
Do you have a picture here of your parents? I think you told me you had one on their wedding day.
Yes.
Okay, if you want to show the camera, we'll see it.
Yes.
We can get a picture of that.
Up a little, okay. Can she hold it up a little wide? Okay.
All right. And both of them were born in Charles City as well?
Charles City, yes.
And Beatrice, what was her maiden name?
She was a Brown.
She was a Brown.
She was a Brown, too.
Okay.
And she lived down the road, Ruthville Road, about a mile down the road from our old home place.
So, when you say down the road, you mean toward the swamp or creek?
Yeah, that's right, across the creek, down in the woods.
Okay. I have, from maps, I've gotten some indication that was known as Parsons Road. Did you ever hear that?
Well, it was a road that went all the way out to Road 5.
And that was
that's home place. Yes.
Okay. Now let's go with your father first. Your paternal grandparents were whom?
Yes.
They were Sylvanus Tyler Brown Sr.
Senior,
And his wife.
And his wife was Martha. She was named. This is Sylvanus. And his wife was named Wilnette.
Wilnette. Okay. All right. So this is Wilnette.
This is Wilnette.
And she was a Brown or a Carter?
No, all I can remember was she was a Brown.
She was a Brown.
She was a Brown, yes.
Okay. All right. We got her on camera there. Okay. And then Sylvanus Tyler Brown.
And Sylvanus Tyler.
Okay.
Now, when he was born Sylvanus Tyler.
And
because his father wasn't married.
Okay. And his, did you ever hear or know of his mother's name?
His mother's name was Martha.
Martha?
And they called her Patsy.
Patsy?
Patsy. But her name was Martha.
Okay. And this, the Tyler name, where does that come from?
Well, Martha worked at Tyler's plantation.
Sherwood Forest?
Sherwood Forest. And she was there in the house. And as I understand, she had 2 children there.
Okay. And the oral tradition in the family is that the father was John Tyler, the president.
President, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I've talked to you a lot about this in the past, and you said to me when we talked about it before that as a child growing up, it was something that you kind of heard when you weren't supposed to hear it, or
Yes,
that it was not
uh-huh.
something openly talked
Talked
about.
about.
Can you remember what you told me about that?
Well, Grandpa didn't make any bones about it. He just always said that he was born down at the plantation, at Tyler's plantation, and when he was growing up, he was the stable boy. They kept him right there, working at the stable.
And what was his mother's job? You said she worked in the house?
She worked in the house, in the kitchen, I understand him to say.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
And his sister, what was her name?
She was named Susan.
Okay.
She was named Susan.
And she was the only other child?
Yeah, those two.
Just those two
Uh-huh.
who were, according to family tradition,
that's right.
children of John Tyler.
Mm-hmm.
When your parents, you said your father didn't make any bones about it. You mean he openly acknowledged it?
He openly acknowledged it too. Yes.
Okay.
So when his mother married Warren Brown, they changed his name to Brown.
To Sylvanus Tyler
Tyler Brown.
Okay.
Yes. And he still kept in touch with the children of the Tyler plantation, because I remember Alfred Tyler coming there quite often and sitting
This
on the
to your
porch.
father's home or to your grandfather's home?
This
Or they were one and the same?
My grandfather's home. Well, now he had his home was there. So when mother and father got married, they built 6 rooms onto his house.
Okay.
Were
there any other stories passed down to you about Sherwood Forest or about his growing up there? Just that he worked in the stable, his
yes.
mother worked in as a cook in the house, and that he was actually born at Sherwood Forest.
Yes.
Okay. As was his sister. Was she younger or older than
No,
he?
she was younger.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And she was Mary Susan or Susan, or did I?
I've always called Aunt Sue. So she, evidently she was Susan. Susan.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
All right. Let's talk for a minute about your mother's mother and father. Do you have a picture of them as well?
Yes, this is my mother's father, Daniel Brown.
Daniel Brown. Okay.
And he taught school. He was one of the first Negro teachers.
He taught at the Ruthville.
Yeah, he taught at Bullfield Academy.
Oh, at Bullfield
Academy. It's right up the road, a few feet from the post office.
The Bullfield Academy was also at the site of the Ruthville High School?
No,
or not?
No, across the road, up a little ways.
Okay, where Mr. Scott's?
Not that far. Not that far. That little house sitting right there before you get to Mr. Scott's. It was right there.
Okay, but was it that house or was it simply that location?
It was in that location because they moved it over and they used it as a garage because it was very small. And that was my first school I went to.
Bullfield.
Bullfield Academy, yes.
Oh, I didn't realize it continued to operate that long. So when you first went there, would this be about 1928 or 29? Or when did you start school?
When I was 5 years old.
So 1928 then would have been when you first started there. And how many years did you attend?
Right then they started building the Ruthville school down a little further down where it is now. And then they moved us down there. But the first year that I went to school, I was there. And
was your father your teacher, or was there another?
No, it was my husband's aunt was the teacher then.
And her name was?
It was Sally Brown.
Sally Brown. Okay. It's hard to keep all these Browns straight. All right, we'll come back to the school a little later. But Daniel Brown's wife your grandmother was
Letty Cotman Brown.
Okay. And Letty Cotman, do you know her parents' names?
I know her father was named Thomas Cotman. Don't come to me, oh boy. I forgot.
I've never asked you before about the Cotman family. Were there any stories passed down about the Cotmans in your family? Any oral tradition that you know about them?
No, I just know Cousin Mamie. She taught school here in the county all her life. And she married Dr. Franklin's brother.
Where did what part of the county did she come from? Did she grow up here in Ruthville as well?
No. She grew up down in Paris Hill, right across from Paris Hill Church.
Oh, in there.
Yeah, that was their home place. We could go through by my grandmother's and go through that road that went up to Paris Hill, and that's how she came up down there.
Okay.
Right down the back of her house.
All right. Was she an educated woman? Could she read and write?
Oh yes.
She could.
Oh yes. She taught school right there at Paris Hill.
Oh, she taught school too.
Yes.
Okay. So both your grandmother and grandfather were school teachers.
Yes.
Okay. Now I think you can go back one more generation, can't you? Is this Daniel Brown's parent, or I'm sorry, you've got one more set of grandparents or great grandparents whose pictures we haven't seen.
Yes. Crawford and Ellen Brown.
Okay. And Crawford and Ellen were whose parents?
Crawford was Polly's. Polly was his mother.
Okay, but who? I'm trying to get who his son or daughter was that you're.
Oh, they had 10 children.
Okay.
They had 10 children, and I can't call them all right now, but they had the oldest one.
Now, are they the parents of Beatrice? I'm getting confused here. Who's?
Yeah, the parents. The parents. This was Mama's grandfather and grandmother.
Her grand. Okay, so we don't. I'm sorry. We've already seen the pictures of her parents.
Yeah.
Okay.
Daniel was one of the children.
Oh, Daniel. Okay, now we got it straight. Okay.
Daniel.
So Daniel is a son of Crawford and Ellen Brown, who had 10 children.
10 children.
Okay.
Yes.
And to look at them, they both appear to me to be Caucasian.
Yes.
And that is true of Ellen. Is that right?
They said Ellen came from Scotland. Overseas, they brought her as an indentured servant over here.
Okay, that's the family tradition, is that she was an indentured servant,
yes.
not a mail order bride.
No. No, indentured servant.
Okay.
And he married her.
Okay, and Crawford was the son you mentioned a little early, of Polly.
Of
Polly Brown.
Yeah.
Okay, and Polly Brown was a daughter of Abram Brown, the founder of Elam
Church. That's right.
And Abram Brown, the founder of Elam Church, was a son of Abram Brown, who we call the slave owner.
That's right. That's
okay.
right.
I want to talk just a little bit about this Brown family, because they're a very remarkable family. I think, certainly in the history of this county, and were very unusual for their time. Were there any oral tradition passed down in your family, first about Abram, the founder of Elam Church? Any stories that you heard as a child about him?
Well, it's quite a bit, but they said that he was never a slave, as I can remember, and I don't know how he got all of this land, but he had lots and lots of land. 300 and some acres.
Well, we're talking about Abram the first.
The first,
okay, that's correct.
And he passed so much down to his children. When he died, he had a will, and he had in the will who would get what, and he left. He even had slaves because he left each of his daughters a slave for the rest of their lives.
Was that something that you ever heard of in your family, or something you've learned because later research?
Yeah, it was talked about.
Oh, it was talked about.
It was talked about.
Your family knew the first Abram had been a slave owner.
Yeah,
A slave owner.
Slave owner, yes.
Okay. Was there, and that he'd owned lots of this land and passed it down to his children. What else was passed down about the Brown family? Was there any oral tradition about the origin of the Brown name?
No. They used to call it Brown E, had an E to it. And then later on, they took the E off.
You heard that in your family?
Yes.
Okay. Any stories about the founding of Elam Church that were passed down to you?
Well, as I can remember, they said that his son Abram, he with his land, he gave Elam this piece of land to build a church because they were going from one house to the other with prayer meetings. And so they built the church. And that's set down on the cemetery road. And they had their meetings there until one March morning it burnt down. They were on their way to church. And I think whoever made the fire must have made it too hot or something, and it caught fire. And the only thing they saved out of that old church was the old organ that is still at Elam and 2 or 3 chairs that were in the pulpit. That's still at Elam.
Do you know when this fire of the burning of this old church down on Cemetery Road took place?
I can't remember the year, but I knew they said it was in March. I remember different ones saying, my first cousin saying it was in March because she was on her way walking, she and her mother, to the church, and it was cold. They were going through the woods to the church, and it was cold, and they could see the flames in there.
Is there any other stories in your family about the origins of the Brown family? It was the only thing you remember hearing is that he was free. He was not a slave. That he owned slaves himself, and that he had all this land which he passed down to his children. And that's
all I remember. Yes,
that's fine. We just want to separate what's oral tradition from what the rest of us think we know based on reading the records, which might not be right. Well, we'll come back to them in a minute again, but I want to kind of shift gears here and talk about what you remember from your own childhood. What do your earliest memories about food and meals, about the kinds of food that your mother prepared, what meal times were like?
Well, as I can remember, we always had a big garden. I remember it was about an open acre, and my daddy always killed 5 hogs every year around November. And we always had plenty of meat in the smokehouse. We had a large smokehouse, almost as big as this room. And he would hang them up. And we had plenty of ham, bacon, And when we killed hogs, we'd go through the community and carry different pieces of hog, And one lady would come down because my mother was teaching, and she would clean the chitlins, and I'd stay from school to help her. I remember that. And we had plenty of chickens, and she used to save her eggs and hatch her own little chickens. And we had plenty of chickens to eat. We had plenty of eggs. We had 3 cows. We had plenty of milk and butter. We never sold any of that, not unless if she needed something from the store, she'd send a dozen eggs to the store to get something like that. But we had our breakfast was every year Daddy would get all these herrings, 1,500, and we would put them up in a big barrel, and we had herrings every morning.
These were salted?
These salted herrings.
Preserved?
Yes.
Were they also in oil or water, or just dry packed with salt?
Dry packed with salt. And I remember my grandfather, every morning my mother would say, go in there and ask grandfather what he wants for breakfast. And he'd name the same thing every morning. He wanted his herring, he wanted his piece of meat, and he wanted his 2 eggs and his cornbread every morning. And he had his coffee. We had, we had pear trees, we had apple trees, and we had peach trees. We had plenty of grapes. I remember the grapevine, just loaded with grapes. And, well, in the garden, he had all kinds, because he'd set up 50 plants of tomatoes every year. And we had plenty of tomatoes. Mama would fix, we'd have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And when she'd go to school in the morning to teach, we'd all get ready, and she'd cast to school, and then she'd go on to her school. And in the evening, when school let out, we'd get on home. And before she went to school every morning, though, she would put a bucket of sweet potatoes in the oven, in the stove, because we had fire for breakfast. And when we got home in the evening, the potatoes were done. We could eat a potato until she came home, and we'd fix dinner. We called it supper at that time. And my daddy would have 2 great big kilns, one with sweet potatoes in it and one with white potatoes in it. And he was the only one that could go in there and get them, because he didn't want us to get the door open and not shut it tight, to keep it from freezing.
These are what we might call today a root cellar?
Yeah,
underground
underground,
cellar?
that's right. But this was on top of the ground, because he would, it was in like a cone-shaped thing. And he would, on the outside, he'd have corn stalks all the way around it. That was to preserve the wind. And then he would have our cabbage. He would open a row right on down, and he would take those cabbage, root and all, and put it down and put dirt up against them and corn shucks. And we'd have cabbage all the winter. See, in those days, most of the time, in the early part, we couldn't can, So we had to preserve what we had. And then I remember putting the turnips and the rutabagas in the barn and putting pine tacks over them. Preserved.
Okay, so you had white potatoes, sweet potatoes, cabbage, rutabagas, and turnips so far that you kept, that you had fresh from this cold storage. Were there any other vegetables what about fruits? Were all these fruits, any of them dried or made into preserves? She'd make preserves. Oh yes, she'd make preserves. And in the apple trees, we used to have, these old-fashioned trunks. I'd go up the tree, my brother and I, and drop them down, pull the apples off the tree and drop them down, and Mama would catch them, wrap them up in newspaper, and put them in the trunk. And so we had apples all the winter. Fresh apples as well.
Yeah,
during the winter.
And we do the same thing with pears. See, because we didn't know anything but cane at those times. So, but she would make pear preserves. She'd make peach preserves, and I guess he's out there. And did you turn it off?
No. Back on.
So, and we had the salt herring and the hog. The smoked, was that smoked hog?
Yes.
And all its parts.
Yes.
And you said you also had cows for milk and butter.
Yes.
Dairy cows. Did you eat beef at all?
Well, once in a while, our cousin that lived way back in the woods, he would kill a cow, and he'd come around with this beef. And Mama used to buy a very big piece from him, and she would bake it. And in order to keep it, she would, these lard tins, you used to have a top to it with a handle, she would put it in that and put it on a string and let it down the well. And we kept it like that. Same thing if we had vegetables left over from Sunday, we'd always have a big dinner on Sunday. And we would put it in several buckets and let it down the well. I remember one time Mama wasn't at home, and my sister told me to put this bucket down the well. And I must didn't tie it on good. I dropped it, and it was down the well, floating on top of the water. And my sister told me, said, "You got to go down and get it." She put a bowl across the bucket that was there, because that was on a chain. You know, you had to wind it up. And she put me on that bucket and started me down the well. I got halfway down. It was cold down there, and I started crying. I was young, and so she had to bring me back up. My brother got on it. He had all the nerve in the world. He got on the bucket and went down and got the food, brought it back up. We used to do some devilish things.
Was this well that you started down? Was it brick lined or was it just a dirt well?
It was it was cemented. My dad had cemented the well all the way around, and we always had plenty of water.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a top on it. You open the door, and there was the bucket, and you let it down, get the water, and bring it back up.
Mm-hmm. What were your early childhood memories about chores? What were your jobs that you had to do as a child?
Well, I had two older sisters.
We haven't asked their names yet. Maybe we should get those.
My older sister was named Elizabeth.
Uh-huh.
And my second sister was named Alberta. And my brother was named Sylvanus the third.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Well, at first, he was named Harrison Tyler when he was first born. Mama named him Harrison Tyler Brown. And as he grew old, oh my goodness, I'm cut those.
Yeah.
Get closer up. Oh, that's it. Okay.
It's gotten through the names of your brothers and sisters, and we were going to get on to the subject of chores.
Chores, Oh yeah, well, that was my that was the third child, and I was the fourth child. And then mother had 4 more boys.
Harrison Tyler, you said, was your brother Sylvanus Tyler's first name. First name. Why did it get changed?
Well, later on, someone came to my aunt came to Mama and she said, "Why in the world did you name him that?" Say he should be named after his daddy. And so she just went on and named him, and she started calling him Sylvanus Tyler Brown. No, she named him Sylvanus Webster, because that was Mama's middle name.
Webster.
And so she named him Sylvanus Webster. So he went to school with that name, Sylvanus Webster Brown. And when the time come to go to the army, they wrote him another Harrison Tyler Brown. And he didn't know that was his name. So Mama tried to explain to him that's what happened. She never changed it, on the record. And so he just went through school, Sylvanus Webster Brown. And so that was it.
Okay, these 4 younger brothers.
One was named Wendell Brown, Thomas Brown, Alfred Brown, William Alfred Brown, and Edward Noble Brown. So that was my younger brothers that I had to take care of after my 2 oldest sisters left and went to college. And I was the oldest daughter there. And when Mama would go to summer school, I'd have to stay home and do all the chores, canning, cleaning.
How old were you when this?
Oh, I was about 15, 16.
And you were taking care of the household, basically.
Yes,
4 younger brothers.
Yes, that's right.
Were they good brothers?
Oh boy, no. The oldest one, Wendell, was very good. He was just an angel. But those 3 were just devils. They just got into mischief all the time, and they knew I couldn't correct them because I wasn't their mother, And Mama would come home on Friday evenings from Richmond from school. She was going to Virginia Union, and I'd tell her what went on, but she would tell them to be showing do what I said, and things like that. And then I would tell my daddy when he come home from work, I'd tell him what they had done. But fathers, they let boys get by with anything.
What are your early memories about games that you played and how your time outside of school was spent when you weren't doing chores?
Oh, in the afternoon we'd play baseball, and we would make our own ball and throw it over the house and call it Anthony over. And we had a checker game, and we loved to play cards, but when Grandpa was living, he wouldn't let us have cards in the house. He said that was the devil. If he caught us with cards, he'd burn them up. But we would get in the paper, we would see, in the magazine, we'd see, they'd send you a deck of cards if you order this, and that's where we got our cards.
What card games did you play
We called it 5 Up.
5 Up.
And there was another game we played too, but I forgot what that one was because I hadn't played cards for so long.
Let's talk about church, because I know that has been a very big part of your life.
Yes.
What are your earliest memories of attending Elam Church?
Oh, we had to go to church. We had to go to Sunday school. My dad and mother went and carried us. And they didn't just send us, they carried us. They were in Sunday school, very wrapped up in Sunday school. And in church, Mama was in the choir, and I remember her up there playing that old organ. It was a pump organ. And I remember her playing that. And in the afternoon, every Sunday afternoon, we had VYPU.
Which stood for what?
What did you say?
Is it Baptist Youth or something?
Yeah, something like that. Do you remember
Something youth. BY?
VYPU.
Baptist Youth.
Something Union.
Yeah.
It's probably Baptist Youth, something Union.
Yeah. So we went to that every Sunday afternoon, and that's how we got with our friends. Now, most of the time, some Sunday evenings, Mama would let us go down the road a little ways to a friend's house, and we'd play with them. And then some children would come to the house to play with us, play ball. I remember one Sunday afternoon, we were out in the field out there by the garage. We were playing baseball, and Daddy went to get Miss Whitley. Well, we didn't know Mama was pregnant because she used to wear these long white aprons all the way down, we didn't know. And she came, and then when the baby was born, she came outside and was getting ready to go. She said, "Come here, children." Said, "Come on, go in and see your baby brother." And my brother, the second one down from window, he said, "I don't want to see no babies," because there's too many babies here now. But I was 8 years old when Grandpa died. I remember that. He died on Christmas Eve.
Now, when you're talking about Grandpa, you're talking about Sylvanus Tyler Brown, the first.
Yeah.
Why don't we just talk a little bit about him? What do you remember about him from your own experience, from living with him?
Well,
aside from his breakfast,
yeah,
we already got his breakfast.
Yeah. He was a good grandfather, and we'd do anything for him. He would, we didn't have bathrooms in the house at that time. I would have to carry his chamber to the toilet, and so that was it. And he would, in the wintertime, he stayed in his room. He had a big fireplace in his room, and we used to keep that going, keep with him that. In the summertime, he used to sit out on the porch and fan, and he'd walk to the post office and to the store to get his tobacco and his mail, and he'd come back home and sit on the porch.
He was a Confederate pensioner, wasn't he? He got a Confederate pension. What did you remember ever hearing about that in your family?
Well, it was years later that he got that. And I remember when he got it, he was very, very happy about it. And he I don't know how it came with check. I don't know how it came. But anyway, he would cash it, and everything I would do for him, he'd give me 4 pennies. And I thought the world of that, you know. And my sister Alberta, he loved Alberta because his daughter was named Alberta, and he thought that she was named Alberta. And he was crazy about her. But Mama had named her Alberta, you know. So he used to call her Bert. Bert, come here, Bert, you know. So he loved Alberta. He had a cow and he had chickens. His own cow and his own chicken. And my brother Pete he thought that he was named after him too. So he told Pete he was going to give him the cow. He's going to give Bert the chickens. He'd get mad with Pete and take the cow back and give it to Bert. So things like little tickling things like that he would do.
When you said he went down to the store to get his tobacco, was this chewing tobacco or smoking tobacco or?
Yeah, he smoked a pipe.
A pipe.
A pipe. I had to clean the pipe out. I used to take his knife and scrape it around and clean his pipe out. Yes, so he smoked a pipe. And I don't remember him chewing tobacco. Yes, he did. He chewed tobacco because I had to clean that spittoon out. I remember that. It was round spittoon with that big, sitting right by his chair, rocking chair.
Did he ever talk about the Civil War at all? Did you ever hear him
I didn't never hear him talk about it. No.
Did he ever talk about, did he ever tell you any stories when he was living with you when you were young children that you remember?
No, he used to say some crazy things sometimes. Like the boy up the road he lost his pig one day. He couldn't find the pig, so he came over to the house, and Grandpa was sitting on the front porch, and he came up there. He said, "Mr. Brown, I'm looking for my pig. Have you seen my pig?" He said, "Son, do I look like your pig?" I mean, he used to say, come up with little crazy things like that. Because I told my sister, I said, the thing that Grandpa used to say, I said, we could have had a book of those. Several little things.
That sense of humor.
Yeah.
Okay. At church, you said you went to Sunday school. And who was your Sunday school teacher? Do you remember?
Yeah, Eddie B. Brown. I remember him very well. We had a kind of a card class. Every Sunday we'd have a different card and had a picture of different things about the Bible and then the story about this picture. And he could explain it so well and go back to his Bible and read from the Bible to us.
Right.
And I remember that so well.
I've seen these, I call them Bible trading cards.
Cards,
They're sort of like
yeah.
baseball cards. Did you get to keep them, or was it like one set that the church had?
Evidently, no. They gave it to us. We carried it home. And I don't know why we didn't keep them. They would have been treasures, man.
And was Sunday school before church?
Yeah,
After
yeah,
it was before
church.
church. And
Yes,
then you would go and you'd sit through the regular
service.
And how long would that regular service be? An hour or longer?
Longer than an hour. Because some preachers used to preach real long. And then there was the singing. And in older days, I can remember my grandmother, not my grandmother, the sisters of my grandfather, because my grandfather died at 54. And the sisters, they, Aunt Sidney, Aunt Anna, I know those two, I remember those two. They used to get up and just shout, and they'd walk down the aisle and just shout. I remember that so well. And I remember when Reverend Curl, now my mother told me that when Reverend Curl came, said he was preaching one Sunday and they got up and was shouting, so he told them to sit down and you listen to what I'm saying, because you can't hear what I'm saying if you shout, and that quiet Elam down. And that's why they claim Elam is such a quiet church that they don't shout and do no more.
All goes back to Reverend Curl.
Curl.
Well, the normal service, do you and it might have changed over time, but do you remember as a child, did it start with like an invocation, or did it start with prayers or scripture reading? What was the normal course of the service, if you can remember?
I can't remember too much about that, and I know my mother always made us sit real still, and my aunt would look at us. She sat on the third seat, and she'd look at us if we even turned around to look around, and we were supposed to sit still and listen. And I remember when Reverend Watkins came. He was our preacher at that time, and he was a very quiet young man. And one Sunday he drove up after Sunday school. He drove up to church and got out the car and helped this lady out of the car, and brought her in and told us that he was going to marry her. And I just cried. I ran and grabbed him by the legs, and I just held on to him, and because I thought he was mine. He used to love the children. He used to pet the children, and love them, And I told Miss Watkins that some time ago. She just laughed. So I thought he was mine. I was just young.
This woman that you referred to is still living.
Still living,
Mrs. Watkins.
Miss Watkins, yeah. So that was that. Was there any kind of period during the service that would be kind of public testimonials? Was that a regular part where people would kind of testify or speak out about things during the service? Not during the service, no. I don't remember that part.
Okay.
Was
and the choir would sing,
yes,
the congregation would sing. Who would read scripture? Would that just be the minister?
Just the minister.
Just the minister.
Just the minister. Yeah, I can remember that.
And the minister would give a sermon that might go on for a long time.
Sometimes for a long time. If he had something good to say, And we used to tease Reverend Watkins because if we were invited to another church, he would really carry on then, because the deacons would say amen to him, and he would really put his whole heart in it. But our deacons was always very, very quiet. They never did say amen. And today they don't say amen.
The communion, was communion served often, or
yes,
once a year, or how often?
Once a month.
Once a month.
It's always been on the 4th Sundays, I can remember.
4th Sunday would be communion.
Yeah.
And was communion limited to church members?
No.
Anybody who came?
Anybody came, but those that were born again Christians, they could take it. But children that hadn't joined the church, they couldn't take it. But that was right before they closed the service, right after he preached.
Right.
He would serve communion.
Okay. Did you, in addition to Sunday school and the regular service on Sunday, did you have prayer meetings during the week at church at all when you were a child?
If they did, they just carried, the grown-ups did, Children didn't go. I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't remember that.
What time would you get out of church on Sunday?
Always around 1 o'clock.
And so then you go home and have
dinner, fix dinner.
And then the rest of the day would be kind of playtime, have fun.
Yes.
A special day of the week. Do you remember any weddings? Did they take place when you were a child? Did they take place at the church, or were they generally at home?
No, they were at church, but they didn't have like they have nowadays. Sweeping gowns and so forth. Several people got married there, but I remember when my 2 sisters got married. They got married there. My older sister married a fellow from North Carolina because she was teaching down there. When she finished Virginia State, she went down there in 1938 to teach, and she's been there ever since. She married and stayed down there. And my second sister, when she finished Virginia State, she worked in Washington for the State Department, and then she got with the teaching, not a teaching position. She was in the school system in Connecticut. She was a secretary to the principal, and she worked there until she retired. She married and lived up there, and they came home and married at Elam. I can remember those, because I guess I was in it anybody else that had a wedding in those days, it was just sort of private, Uh-huh.
What about funerals? Were they a big occasion in the church?
Yes.
I think you once told me that one of your grandfathers was an undertaker.
Not my grandfather.
Oh.
But Aunt Sue's son
And his name was?
Bill. They called his name William Jones.
Okay, William Jones.
Uh-huh.
Okay,
Yeah,
he was the undertaker.
Yeah.
All right, and do I remember that he had a big, long white beard?
He looked just like Santa Claus. He had this long beard. At least Grandpa did too. Grandpa, his was real white, and so was William Jones's, and came way down. And when Grandpa died, he came to bring the casket to put him in. In those days, it didn't
Embalm.
And so they put him in this, and my brother under me, he said, "Oh, Santa Claus is here! Santa Claus is here!" And he said, "Son, I don't have a thing for you but them 2 old white mules I got outdoors." And it kind of, Santa Claus didn't come to see us that year,
Because your grandfather died on Christmas Eve.
Yeah. Oh.
What a sad story.
Yeah.
Very poignant, let me put it that way. Well, is he the one who used to tell you the ghost stories about corpses and other things to scare you?
No, that was my father's half sister, Aunt Jenny. She used to tell me crazy stories.
Do you remember any of those stories?
Just one. I remember we were sitting there. That was the time Grandpa died. We were sitting there in the dining room, and everybody was talking, and then some people prayed and some people sang, and then Aunt Jenny said, "Let me tell you this. Say, we went to set up with," she called the name of the man, and they had him laying out with a sheet over it, and said, "We were singing and praying, and my brother, my son, and we were sitting there near the window, and we were listening, and all at once the corpse raised up and said, 'Where's my pipe? My pipe?' So when it did, we jumped out through the window and ran." I don't know whether that was true or not, but Aunt Jenny told that
Quite
one.
a story. Lazarus rising from the
from the dead. I guess we did prayed and sang so much it rose the man up. That's the only one I can remember.
Once the corpse was put in the box, well, first of all, you mentioned sitting up.
Yes.
Now, I take it this might be something like a night watch, sitting through the night
they'd come and just sit with you all night.
With the corpse or with the family?
No, with the family, the corpse too.
And what was the purpose of this? Just to be a community, just to provide support, or was there some religious significance to sitting up with the corpse?
I don't remember that, because at that time I was just 8 years old. At that time, because if Mama and them went to somebody else's to set up, we didn't go.
It was just called sitting up.
Sitting up,
And it was just simply being with the family and the corpse.
And I don't remember any food to be served or anything like that.
Now, when the funeral took place, was it at the church or was it the graveside?
No, it was at the church. When we went to the church for Grandpa's, Mama let me go because I was the older of the boys. They stayed home, but it was so much snow on the ground because people couldn't get out. And we got to the church. I remember getting to the church, carrying Grandpa in, and then he said a little something.
We'll stop here. You were at the point of talking about getting to the church on the occasion of your grandfather's funeral in the snow.
And we finally got out to the cemetery. I remember that. And they had to clear the snow away to bury him there. That's all I can remember. Buried right by Grandma.
Was there also a service at graveside, or just the one in the church?
Just the one in the church.
I have heard that some caskets had glass on the top, so you could actually view the deceased. Did you ever see anything like that? No,
I saw it with my aunt's husband. He had that in Richmond. my aunt married Dr. Roman, and she had a casket like that. It was glass was halfway down.
Were there flowers put on the casket at all, or
We didn't have any
No?
flowers at that time because
Right.
it was in the winter time. We didn't have flowers that time.
What about attending the grave in years after?
Afterwards.
Was there? I noticed at Old Elam Cemetery, I think there are very little put on the graves, but some cemeteries around here are just covered with artificial flowers. Is there any tradition at Elam about whether you put things on a grave or you don't put things on the grave?
No, you can put whatever you want on there. I remember when I was a child and my mother was coming along, we always had plenty of roses or different kinds of flowers in the yard, and she would cut them and put it in bunches and put them in a jar and put them on the grave. But since she died and I took over, I have about 16, 18 graves that I decorate every Memorial Day, and I buy wreaths or make wreaths for them every year.
So your family tradition is every Memorial Day.
Yes,
you go
yes.
out and
And
decorate the grave.
Yeah, we have services out there.
Y'all want to take my picture?
Oh, go back now.
I think Mr.
Yeah.
Christian wants to join us here.
No, I gotta go pull it now.
All right.
I'm waiting back for this.
Okay. And so what we did was we had service out there. Our pastor always come down, and different ones we are out there, and we give a history of different ones. That we give a history of Abram Brown, a history of Canaan Jones. She left here when she was a child and went up to New York and joined Ebenezer. Abyssinia Baptist Church in New York, and she came back and organized a Willing Workers Club here at Elam, and that was in 1910, and we've had that going ever since. So we have a monument for her out there, and we always place a wreath at her grave, and one at Abram Brown's grave, and say a prayer and go home. After we decorated the cemetery, and it looks pretty good.
Did you ever? What about revivals when you were a child? Was there a time every year when you always had a revival, or did it change?
Yeah. Oh, it changed. We used to have revival on the first Sunday in August every year, and then Rome Watkins kind of changed it because so many other churches was having revival practically at the same time, and we wanted to visit those churches, So he moved ours up to July, and the first Sunday in July. So for years we had first Sunday in July until it was a convention going on one year, and so Reverend Hayes asked us to move it to June, so we could go to this convention. And so then after that, we moved it back to July again, so it's still in July. And I remember when I joined the church, I was 10 years old. And I think it was like 10 or 12 of us of my age at that time.
Was that traditional that revival was the time when young people joined the church?
They didn't join the church like they do now every Sunday or any time, they feel like it, So it was just at that particular time that you joined the church.
It became uniquely a ceremony for bringing young people into
the church. That's right.
In revival, you said fourth Sunday. That suggests to me that revival was just one day. It wasn't something that went all
the
week.
week.
It went all week.
Yeah, started all the week because I joined the church on a Monday night. See, we had it at 12 o'clock in the daytime, and we had it at night at 8 o'clock.
So you go to church at 12 o'clock for a service, and then you go back at night, at 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
For 5 days or 7 days?
For 5 days. Till Friday.
Till Friday.
Sunday through Friday.
And you try to get other members of the community to come. Or was it a homecoming time also? Or
No, that wasn't homecoming for us.
It was
No. Years ago, so many of our members left and went to New York to work, either married and stayed up there. And every year, I tell you about our name, they would come down on the fourth Sunday in September. We called it homecoming. Everybody come home. And people would come, and you had your house full of people because they stayed at your house and you fed them, and we had a big day for that one day on Sunday, all day long. Served dinner outdoors and everything. And so that's the way it went. And we've had that since 1910. We've had homecoming on the fourth Sunday in September. And we still have it.
Mm-hmm. So revival wasn't really a time for eating a lot. It was just a time for going to church a lot.
That's right. Twice a day.
Every day of the week.
Every day until Friday. Yes, indeed. And we always had a visiting minister. And in those days, some of the ministers didn't have cars. And they would come and stay in your house. Mm-hmm. Different ones would take them, And they would stay right here. So my grandfather used to love the ministers, so he'd love for them to come stay with him. We didn't have an extra bed. They had to sleep with Grandpa.
Did you ever, as a child, hear anything about anybody ever talk about voodoo or conjuring? Anybody talk about witchcraft or anything like that? You never heard anything like that? Okay. What are your earliest memories about sickness and about doctors?
Well, we had two doctors in the family, Dr. Franklin and Dr. Brown. And
Dr. Brown's first name was?
He was named William.
William
Hugo Brown.
Okay.
Yeah, he lived over here with his mother, and he never married, but he was a very good doctor. Very good.
Now, was he? Am I getting confused? Was he born in Ohio or something and came back?
No. He was born right here.
He was born here. Okay.
He was born here, but he went to Howard school, Howard University School, and but he had a brother that was a doctor that was in Ohio, Samuel Brown. Dr. Samuel Brown.
How many? At one point, I heard that there were. How many doctors were there in the Brown family? Do you know? Dentists?
Yes, it was a lot. Now on Arthur's side, his uncles, he had 5 uncles that were doctors.
These were all in the Brown family.
Yeah. There's Aunt Sydney's sons. And she had 12 children altogether, but 5 of the boys were doctors. And I think Arthur has counted, it was 11 in his family that was doctors. And I think it was 9 in my family.
I've also heard that at one point in time, Charles City accounted for more of the black doctors in America than any other county.
Really?
Is that? I don't know whether that's right or not.
It could be. We've never thought about that. Because now my granddaughter is a doctor, so that's another one added. And Knapp's sister's daughter is PhD. So, and Knapp's brother Charles was a doctor. So I told my daughter the other day to sit down and write all those names down, and because that's good history.
Yeah. We were back on the subject of sickness and doctors. With all these doctors in the family, I gather they attended you when you got sick?
Yeah, because my mother's brother, Fred Brown, he lived in Richmond. And anything that Mama wanted to know or what to do, he'd tend to us. He used to come down and give her some little red pills to give us each spring. He called it the cleaning out.
Cleaning out pill, huh? For spring cleaning.
Yeah. So you didn't get a whole lot of diseases, And he used to come down quite often, especially on Sunday. Mama had to cook up this big dinner for all these people to come down.
Were you ever very sick when you were young?
No.
Any of your brothers and sisters really seriously ill?
No. My daddy used to suffer with the backache. That was because he used to work in the woods, hauling wood, lifting and everything. And I remember one time, though, he did have pneumonia. And that Sunday, all the doctors was there. There was 5 upstairs in his bedroom. Dr. Roney married my aunt. Dr. Tennant, he was not in the family, but he was Dr. Roney's brother-in-law. And Dr. Will, he wrote Dr. Franklin. Who was the 5th one? Uncle Fred. The Seabird dad, because he had pneumonia. They come to the conclusion that he had pneumonia.
Evidently, he survived.
God,
so.
oh yeah.
What do you remember about? About Dr. Franklin. Let's talk about him for a minute. He was a dermatologist,
yes,
right? Did he ever treat anybody in your family, or did you know anybody who was treated for him?
For this skin stuff? No, one thing, he was a physician, and he did this on his own, and he put different creams together, whatever and he made this cream, and so many people used to see it. People going there all the time that had this skin trouble, and he would give them some, and it would go away. A man flew here from California to see him. He had heard about him, and he cured it. And after he died, someone called us and asked us about Dr. Franklin. And he was from far away too, said he had heard so much about him, and we told him that he was deceased. But his son, we thought he had the formula, and he lived in Newport News, to call him. And I don't know what happened there, but Buster did have it. He had the formula.
I had heard, I think, that there was some famous movie star that flew into Bird Field and came to see Dr.
I wouldn't be surprised.
You hadn't heard that
No,
story.
I didn't hear that story, but I know somebody came from California.
Uh-huh.
Well, that could have been that one, But I heard someone came from California.
To be treated.
Uh-huh.
What do you remember about travel? By horse, by buggy, by train, by auto? What as a child? How did you get around, and what do you remember?
Well, by my mother teaching, we always had an old car, and because she taught down at Mount Zion, she taught at Little Elam. Little Elam was the last school she taught at, and she taught at Woodbury. Those 3 schools. See, one thing about Mama was having her children the same time she was teaching. And if she was going to have a baby, she didn't teach this year. She'd wait till the next year. And so when my brother Tom was born, the superintendent told her she couldn't teach anymore until she was through having her children. So after Eddie was born, she had 2 more after that. And after Eddie was born, he was 5 years old and she went back to teaching. And but we always had a car. And
was yours the only car in Ruthville, or were there others?
No,
that had cars?
Dr. Franklin had his car. And I remember Mr. Charlie Smith had a car. And different ones, they had their cars, yeah. Now I remember my daddy had this T-Mall Ford, and it didn't have glasses in it. It had curtains. You pull down and tack them on the side, and no heater.
Was your mother the only woman in the county who drove a car?
No,
There were other women.
There was other women. Yeah, because Aunt Adley's daughter down here, she had her car. I think she was teaching at Little Elam at that time. And Miss Cordy, Cordelia Banks, she had her car. I don't remember Miss Annie having a car because she was staying with Miss Cordy, and they drove together. They were sisters. And Mamie Franklin had all the ladies that were teaching, they had cars.
All the school teachers had cars.
But we had a horse and buggy too, and and Neff's father had that's how they came to school, because they didn't have a school bus at that time. They used to live down at Cedar Forest, so they had their horse and their cart. They would come to school, bring them all to school and that, and they would tie it out at where Colonel Lewis had his store. Used to tie the horse out there while they in school.
Did you, as a child, say up to the age 15, did you ever leave the county? And if so, where did you go to for the day or to travel or on vacation?
Now,
or things?
my aunt lived in Richmond. She married Dr. Roman. And before she got married, she was teaching at Paris Hill. And she stayed with us because her mother had died. And so she stayed with us. And each summer, she would take me for a week up there with her.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just so glad because she'd give me a dress and pair of shoes for I left. Yes, I remember that.
What was the big city like to you?
Oh, it was. See, she had a daughter too, and she'd let us go over to Broad Street and go into the 5 and 10 cent store, buy some things, and we used to just love that. And we went to the movie. They would take us to the movie, and I enjoyed that. Something that some of the other children in here in the county didn't get a chance to do. Mm-hmm.
What do you just mentioned that you would get a dress. And you had earlier mentioned that your mother always wore this long white dress.
Apron,
go
yeah.
to the floor.
Uh-huh.
What else do you remember about the way people dressed when you were a child?
Well, Aunt Jenny, she used to wear these long black dresses. And I mean, they were long, And that's what I remember her. She used to sit on the front seat right at the end. She'd sit there and just nod at the pastor. But they didn't say anything, because you're supposed to be quiet at that time. Mm-hmm. And looked like every Monday she would come down the house to see Grandpa, and she would come down to help wash. With the washboard. And I remember in the summertime she'd come and help wash. Stay all night and go back home.
What kind of clothing did you wear as a child?
Mama used to do a lot of sewing. I don't know when she found time to do that, but she had her sewing machine, and she made all of our clothes. And you'd buy a sack of flour, buy a sack of sugar, and you use those sacks. You bleach them, and there you would make your underclothes out of those things. Make pillowcases. We'd sew 4 those sacks together and have a sheet. So that's how we did. We didn't have many store-bought clothes.
What about shoes? Did you wear?
Oh, that's reading my feet so bad now. Well, when we did a pair of shoes, now we didn't wear them in the summertime. And Maxine, maybe she was a little better off than we were when we were children. But we had one pair of shoes we'd wear to church. Okay? And so when you need a pair of shoes, Mama would draw our feet on a cardboard and go to Richmond and buy us a pair of shoes to fit those shoes. Sometimes they'd fit and sometimes they didn't. But you didn't sell them because you was afraid they'd take them back and you didn't get any shoes. And my uncle moved to Connecticut and married a woman up there, and they worked at a college, Connecticut College for Women, and they were the custodians there. And when the children left in the summertime to go home, they'd leave a whole lot of clothes and a whole lot of shoes and things in their room, and they were supposed to clean them up. So he'd put them in a big box and send them to Mama. And naturally we'd be fighting over who could wear what. And, we got extra things that way.
Uh-huh.
And then my aunts were very good to us, to me anyway. She would come from Baltimore and she would bring me a dress, store-bought dress. I was glad of that. Mm-hmm. That was my daddy's 2 sisters.
Did you ever hear about something called a jive chain? Is that something that you ever saw anybody wear or heard anything about?
Jive chain?
Yeah,
the boys used to wear. Well, Arthur, when He was in Atlantic City, working up there, and he came home with this green suit on, and with this long chain hanging down to his knee, and they'd do like this, wind it around their finger and things like that.
That was a jive chain.
Yeah, that was a jive chain. Yeah.
It was pretty cool.
Cool then.
Any other kinds of jewelry that you remember people wearing other than obviously maybe a wedding band or something?
No.
How did people wear their hair?
Mama always had long hair, and she always put it in a bowl back behind her, and she always had it. It was real thin, like mine then, and she'd make a round ball and pin it. But when she was in college, she said, over at Petersburg, she said they used to call them rats. When you comb your hair and you get a whole lot of hair, in the comb, she'd save it and wrap it around and put it in her hair to make her hair set out.
And they were called rats?
They called them rats.
Rats.
Mm-hmm.
Huh, that's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Your mother had straight hair then?
Yeah, straight hair, just as straight as, very straight. Mm-hmm.
Let's see. What about early memories about music outside of church? Did you ever hear music outside of church? Or was
we
church
had old record player that you wind up real old.
And what kinds of records would you listen to?
I don't know, whatever somebody would give us. I think we got that one from Aunt Frances, and she gave us all these old records that she had.
Were they like classical music or popular music, or don't remember what they were?
I know we used to dance, but
what kinds of dancing would you do?
I don't know, just jump it up and down. We never seen nobody do.
You made up your own dancing.
Your own dancing, yeah.
Anybody in your family play instruments besides your mother playing the organ?
No.
No guitars or banjos or anything like that? Okay. We've talked a little bit about school, but I'd like to kind of revisit that. You got to school because your mother drove you there. And you started attending the Bullfield School, which was sort of a one-room
school.
One-room school,
yeah.
But only went there 1 year,
Yeah.
and then you started at Ruthville. Yeah. What was Ruthville like when you started there?
Oh, we were tickled to death because this was a new school, and I remember my first grade teacher. She came from Portsmouth, and she stayed in the county.
What was her name?
Oh boy, what was her name? Oops, can't remember. Hello. I can remember. I can see her right there.
But the Ruthville School, was it 2 stories high?
No,
it was just one story. And how many rooms were there in it?
It was 6 rooms.
6 different classrooms.
6 rooms, yeah, 6
and
rooms.
It went first grade through 11th or 12th?
12.
Through 12.
Through 11.
Through 11.
Those
right. just went through 11.
Yeah.
And so it was the only place in the county where black children could go to high school. Is that right?
That's right, to high school, yeah.
So there were other schools for children that were, 1 through 6?
6, that's right.
But if they wanted to go 7 through 11, they had to come to
here. Now, down at Mount Zion, they just went as far as the 5th grade.
Only to 5th
grade, because Mama taught down there.
Now, was that school called Mount Zion when she taught there, or was it called Micah?
No, Mount Zion.
It was called Mount Zion. Okay.
School is still there.
Correct.
Because the people in the community built it. So that's the only school that Charles City don't own.
Is that one? Okay, but its correct name was always Mount Zion.
Mount Zion.
Mount Zion School. Okay. And at Ruthville, when you had this school with the 6 rooms, do you remember who the principal was?
Mr. Logan was the principal. Yeah, he was the principal.
And how did the school day start?
Oh, it was beautiful. He had us all in the auditorium, and he would sing and pray. And then he would say a lot of Bible verses, didn't he? And you know, we learned a lot about the Bible in those days. You know, some children wanted to be mean and wouldn't do, but most of the children in those days, we were all right. They were disciplined, you know, by the teachers and by the principals, so we got along all right.
So the school day started with this devotion
Yes,
in the auditorium where
Mhm.
all the children were assembled.
Mhm.
Did you say the Pledge of Allegiance at all? Was that part
I
of
think
every
we
day?
did. I think we did, as I can remember. And then he had a verse for us to say, and we said it all together. I will try, with God's help, to do my best in all things of duty. We say that every morning.
That was like the school motto
Yeah.
or something like that. And then you'd go to your classroom, and you'd have one teacher
That's all day.
Uh-huh.
All day.
And what subjects did you have?
I had
first through sixth grade.
I remember Miss Adina. We had third and fourth grade in there, in her room, and Miss Annie in the fifth.
Annie, what was Annie's last name?
Annie Franklin.
Franklin. Okay.
Annie Franklin, and I had the fifth and sixth grade under her, and Miss Marie. I had.
What was her last name?
She was Oliver.
Okay,
Marie Oliver.
Marie Oliver.
She was a Brown. She married Oliver. He was the agriculture teacher. And so I had the seventh grade under her. And then we went into high school in the other part of the school.
And the subjects were what? Reading, math, reading, writing, arithmetic, is it? And geography?
I used to love writing. That we used to have a book on locker writing, and you had to do your locker just like the book said. You know?
Penmanship.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. They don't have that anymore. But anyway, it was good. And so many, because my mother had even up to her death, she had a beautiful hand of locker, you know. So in high school, we had algebra, science, chemistry, history, and literature, home economics. I used to love that. I used to love to sew.
You mentioned that your mother went to Virginia Union.
But yeah,
This is after she'd had all her children and stuff.
that's
She
right,
went to college.
yeah.
Why did she do that? What was her purpose?
Well,
of going
one
to
thing
college?
about it, see, she had started over at Virginia State when she first got married. You know, before she married, and so when you finished high school, they would hire you to teach if you were qualified. And so she was teaching. And then she would go to Virginia Union to renew her certificate. And she was trying to get her BS degree. And she would go every summer. I don't know whether it was every summer, but she would go quite a few. And see, at those times, they didn't have anybody to tell you what to take and when to take and all that. And so one day she finally looked like to me, I've been to school so long, I ought to have my BS by then. So she went to the administrative office in Virginia Union and was in there asking about her qualifications and whatnot. And the lady told her, said, Miss Brown, say, you have enough units here to have your master's degree, but you didn't take the right subjects. So she never got her BS degree because she didn't take the right subjects.
Huh.
But she had been there long, long and hard.
Huh. Was she the first in her family to go to college?
Aunt Frances went to Virginia State, but I don't think she stayed to get her BS either, because she got married and her husband didn't want her to teach. And her brother Tom and Dan went to Virginia State. They were I don't know how long they stayed there because they were on the football team. And Uncle Dan, they was getting ready to put him and it froze, and they found it was cut, so they didn't take it.
What was this? Would have been Dan Brown,
Dan Brown,
son of
Daniel Brown.
Of Daniel Brown.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and he played for football for Virginia Union.
Virginia State.
Oh, Virginia State. Okay, and he was very light skinned.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
But
yes.
at some point, somebody determined that he had some black ancestry.
Yeah. So they wouldn't take it.
About what time would this have been? In 1930s? Are we talking about, or 1940s?
Oh no, that was before the.
Huh.
In early 30s.
Early 30s.
Uh-huh.
Huh.
Uh-huh.
Let's see. You mentioned that the children were disciplined by both the teachers, I guess, and the principal.
Yes,
What was the form of discipline? Was it a paddle or a switch or?
Well, I got a whipping every day under Miss Adina.
Uh-oh.
Because I couldn't spell. She had a long rule. You held up your hand. If you missed a word, you got 5 licks for that word. She'd burn your hands up. Well, I'd learned much spelling at home. Mama would call them to me. I knew them. When I got to school, if she didn't call them in order like they were on the book, I forgot. It looked like to me I had, just like a piece, I had learned it, you know. And if she started at the bottom and went up, I'd mess them up too. So I got plenty of licks every day. So that's when I go to the dictionary to make sure now I can spell right.
Marked for life.
Yeah. Oh, my hand, you'd bring your hand up. You held that hand up.
Did you mentioned your 2 older sisters went to college.
Uh-huh.
Did you go to college too?
No, I didn't.
You did not?
No, I didn't. Well, you know, my mother worked hard. My daddy didn't make much money in the woods, hauling wood for somebody else, you know. And I think if it weren't for Mama going, you know, teaching, we didn't get far. And so when these 2 older sisters wanted to go to college, and Alberta went away with my uncle up in Connecticut and worked 2 summers so she could save her money to go to college. And she did. She came back, and then after Liz graduated, Mama could help her, you know. But both of them got jobs on the campus. Alberta worked in the dining room, and Elizabeth worked in the laundry room. They made $12.50 a month, and Mama had to send them $12.50. And so that was their monthly rate going to school, you see. And so I saw Mama would be worried because she didn't have the money, because she had to do this and do that, and, you know, she just didn't have it. And so I remember when she got ready to graduate, she owed the school $300. Mama didn't have it. So she went to her brother in Richmond, Dr. Fred Brown, and she told him that if he went to the bank and borrowed that, you know, she would pay it back. And he did. And that's how Elizabeth graduated, because she had paid her money out. And I saw her cry so many times because she didn't have the money, and what was she going to do, you know? Mm-hmm. And she had all of us at home. And I said to myself, now you're not going to cry over me like that. So when I finished Ruthville, I just got married and went away.
Did any of your younger brothers go to college, or was it just the 2 older sisters? They went to.
Now, my brother Pete went into the service, so he didn't go to college. My brother Wendell finished A&T, North Carolina. Mm-hmm. And my brother Tom, he went to Virginia State, and the Army took him out of school. When he came out, he finished and went to Meharry to go into dentistry. And a friend of Mama's in Richmond, Dr. Jones, he got him into Meharry first to make teeth, because he used to make teeth, Dr. Jones. And Tom, he went 3 years there, and if he'd have went another year, he would have been a dentist. but he got married, and that was the end of that. But he did get a job in making these teeth down in Atlanta, and he was with a white company. He made these teeth, and then he got married. And they started having children, and so he went to the post office and got a job there. He worked at the dentist's office in the daytime and worked at the post office at night. At that time, they didn't hire colored people in the post office, salt and maid. And they thought he was white. He had straight hair just like Mama's. And so they hired him, and that's why he worked and took care of his family. He worked in the daytime making teeth, and at night he worked in the post office.
Many of the members of the Brown family, as you see from the pictures, obviously have white ancestors and are very light skinned. Have there been any members of the family that, in quote, have passed as white, gone on and sort of identified themselves as white, kind of left the fold, if you will?
I think my daddy's two brothers, older brothers, Job and Noble, they left here when they were 16 and 17 years old and went to New York.
And they identified themselves as white?
Or? Evidently, they never came back. Huh. And we understand that they married white women, and they never came back.
How did the family feel about that? Was that something that anybody ever talked about?
They never talk about it. No, never talked about it.
Have you yourself ever been taken as white?
Some people have said so, and I told them no.
You've always identified yourself.
Yeah.
That's fine. Mm-hmm. Let's see, where were we? Early childhood memories about holidays, birthdays, Christmas. What were the important holidays in your family in terms of family rituals and that sort of thing? We all remember about Sundays.
Just Christmas. That's all.
Christmas was the one.
Yeah, We never said anything but birthdays. If it came up, today's your birthday, that was it. No, you never made nothing special about it.
But Christmas was a special day. And that was special. What happened on Christmas?
Oh, well, Mama and Daddy would always go to Richmond on Christmas Eve. And they'd come back, with apples and oranges and candy. And Uncle Fred would give them some toys that his children had outgrown or didn't want, And they'd bring them to us. And I remember she bought me a doll baby. And it had cross eyes. My oldest brother, he teased me for this little cross-eyed doll baby. And he took his finger and plucked the eyes out. My only doll baby I ever had. I was real small. These children could do some terrible things.
Would you have special meals at Christmas?
No.
No? Just
regular, same thing we've been having all along.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Because we always had, she'd cook a hen some Sundays, and if she had a rooster that she'd cook him too, But because she used to have a whole lot of roosters in order to sterilize the eggs and have chickens.
Do you have any, you mentioned that you play baseball a lot. Were there any organized teams?
No.
Anything like
No,
that?
nothing like that, no.
Okay. What about early memories of hunting, fishing, oyster gathering? Was there anybody, you said you'd get these 1,500 shad. How would you get those? Would your father fish for them, or would he train
I don't know.
for them?
I don't know how he got them, because he'd come home with all these shad. All these herons. Now he must have caught them, because in the spring that was his duty. He used to fish in the spring and catch shad and sell them. And
so he was a waterman.
Yeah. He had his own boat. He and his cousin, they used to fish together. And
did they fish with nets?
Nets.
And did they make these nets?
Yes, and he would have us to hold them so they could tie them together, and things like that.
I've heard it called knitting.
Knitting the net.
And your father would knit.
He'd go and buy a certain amount, so many pounds of net. Then he'd have to put the the string through the end of it around it, to hold it together.
Okay, so he actually bought his nets. He didn't make them? Okay.
No. And then and when he come out of the rubber, he called them cleaning them. They had to clean them and get all that debris out of them.
Out of the net?
Yeah.
Did they string him on the fence or something? Do you remember seeing that? Or was his net always left down where his boat was?
No. He'd always clean his net and he'd leave it down there at Wilcox Wall. Was it Wilcox or Warner Wall? One or the other. Where he used to have his cabin.
He had a little cabin.
Little cabin down there. He would go down there on Sunday evening and come back on Saturday evening.
So he'd spend the whole week down there. Doing his fishing.
Doing the shad season.
During shad.
And that's how he made his money then. And that's how he had money to buy his mules. One year he took his money and he went to Richmond and he bought him two mules for $200.
Boy, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, that was a whole lot of money then,
And the mules he used for his gardening. Did he also have a farm that he?
We had 10 acres at home. He used to farm. And
what would he grow in that 10 acres?
Mostly corn and wheat. But he didn't never sell him because he used that for his cows and his mules.
Okay. I think we've already talked about farming and gardening. When you were growing up, were there any local taverns that you remember? Or other stores that were near here to Ruthville? In Ruthville?
Just a community store and Davis's store across the road. Davis had a store there. And the community store was the colored people got together and put that store there. And they would to help the colored people, because they didn't have much money. And
it was a cooperative
thing, yeah.
And was that the store that your mother would send the eggs to when she wanted to buy something?
No, she would send them over to Davis's store. I remember carrying them in there.
And was Davis white or black?
Yeah, he was white.
He was a white
man, yeah.
And he ran this store.
Yeah.
And how did the community store? Was it different people would volunteer, or did it have a?
As I can remember, I don't remember who used to run it too much because one 2 years when my mother wasn't teaching, she ran it.
Oh.
I remember that. And different ones after she left, ran it until it went down.
I understand that there was an Oddfellows Lodge here in Ruthville.
Right next to the church.
Right next to the church.
Right next to the church. You know where our annex is? The annex to the church?
Right,
Well, the Oddfellows Hall was right there. And Miss Annie used to teach in there. They say she used to teach in there. I forgot what class she taught. I don't know which class she taught.
This was from the high school, you're saying? She taught school there. Who built did the Oddfellows Lodge have any connection to the church?
Well, some of the members.
Some of the same.
Yeah, because my daddy was one.
He was in the Oddfellows.
He was in the Oddfellows because when we got ready to build an annex over to the church, they was going to build an annex on it, and Knapp told them that they didn't own the land. They couldn't build the annex there because they didn't own the land. And they went and searched it up at the courthouse, and sure enough, they didn't own the land. It belonged to the Oddfellows. And so my daddy and Mr. Charles Smith and Mr. Tom Jones, those three, I think it was, they were the only living ones that used to belong to the Oddfellows. And they signed the deed over to the church and gave them the land to put the annex on.
What was the purpose of the Oddfellows? Do you have any idea?
It was a secret organization. Just like the Basins and the Eastern Stars. It was a secret organization.
But did it have any
purpose? They did good work.
Good work. It was
Okay,
so.
That's what it was. You just do good work for people and help people and anybody in distress. You help them out.
Okay. Were there any burial societies that operated in Ruthville that you know of? Was there like an old order of St. Luke Hall?
It was an order of St. Luke too, up on. There was one on 155, and there was one down here on the Glebe Lane.
Do you remember one down on Route 5 near Sturgeon Point?
No, I don't remember that one.
Okay. What did the Order of St. Luke do that you remember?
That was sort of it was goodwill, and it taught you how to save.
So it was connected with the bank in Richmond.
Yeah, it taught you how to save.
So people would actually take their money to the hall, maybe, or something?
I can't remember what they really did, but I know that they used to, you could, if you wanted to save $1, you want to save 50 cents, you just carried, things like that.
So they actually kind of operated as banks here in the county. And people would get burial insurance through St. Luke's?
I imagine they did. I'm not sure. No.
Okay. Were there any taverns or bars in Ruthville?
No, the only one I can remember that they had it up on the end of Route 5. It was a tavern up there, and they said they used to sell liquor there. You know where Hope's store is.
Right.
But it was across the road, right in that turn that you go. Because I remember seeing it had a porch all the way around it. And I imagine they just go there to have a drink and set it on the porch. I remember that.
You don't remember the Blank's Tavern at the Crossroads?
Crossroads, no. I don't remember that.
Okay. I think we about at a place where maybe we'll stop for the day, I think.